This is a question that could be answered yes, no, or you could elaborate. I'll let you make that determination. But given the time, let's keep this timekeeper to about a minute per candidate. Now we'll start with Mr. Washington. This is a question on commercial recycling. Currently, the city produces over 400 tons of solid waste a day, over 2/3 of which are non-residential and unrecycled. We already have a city ordinance that mandates separation of recyclables by commercial and institutional solid waste generators. Will you assure us that every commercial establishment, institution, and apartment complex replaces dumpsters with recycling receptacles? You can say yes, no, or you can allow. Mr. Washington.
I'm going to do two things. I'm going to say, I'm going to elaborate, but I'm first going to finish the question I didn't answer before. No. Okay,
you have 1 minute.
No, there shouldn't be subsidization. I got off on the tangent with that. It should not be subsidization, and I agree with Mr. Selwak. There's Empire Building going on in the area. There's no excuse for that. I live east of Main Street. I don't have a sewer line on my house. I've got a septic tank. I'm not asking to subsidize mine. We should be subsidizing the west part of the county. Yes, commercial establishment should be required.
Okay, it is already an ordinance, just for everyone's information. Mr. Kane?
Yes, and I think I live in a rental property, and I've been living in it forever. I think what we also need to do is make sure we enforce it. Because a lot of times you have it there, but it's not enforced like it really needs to be. And a lot of them don't abide by, so I think maybe we could work something up. I know, the code enforcement has a lot on them. The ordinance, who deals with all that stuff in the city, already have a lot on their plate. So maybe we can work with the different apartment complexes, the different companies, maybe educate them a little more on that so that they can help comply with the ordinance as well.
Mr. Engel?
Yes, I think that's something that we need to move towards, certainly. Not only commercial solid waste, but also food waste. Seems like good areas we could be kind of capturing some of this stuff and looking forward and really tackling some environmental problems going on right now. Also, I think this is a very good example of, and this has happened in several different areas of the city where we've made a good ordinance and then failed to live up to it. I think, there's a similar ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, that says that we'll only buy coal from responsible mining companies that follow state and federal guidelines. And so another one, it's a great idea, it's something we should put in there, but haven't lived up to. So yes, I would be in favor of moving towards doing what we decided years ago we were going to do.
Ms. Lutz?
Yes, we should. Yes, we should enforce it. But a real big yes to education. And that education can come in our schools, it can come in our universities, it can come in the neighborhoods. Because education is something that we can all get behind. And if we do that, then possibly we'll have participation too. It's just like the vote. That's a great thing to do, but people aren't doing it. So if we can't get people to vote, we can't get people to recycle. We've just got to figure out a way to get people involved in doing the right thing.
Ms. Patel?
Yes, and yes on education.
Mr. Powell, thank you for succinctness.
Yeah, when I was on the commission from 2008 to 11, this used to drive me crazy. I mean, it's at least once a month I'd sit down with the city manager and pull my hair out and say, what can we do about this? Because it's just not being done. And really what it comes down to is we don't have the staffing to enforce it. And to do that, that means more money. And so we've got to figure out a way where we can hire dedicated people. And one of the problems is especially, I mean, a lot of your hospitality industries, they're doing all this at night. They're doing this long after folks have gone to bed that normally enforce these things. And so, if we really want to get our hands on it and make sure that it happens, we're going to have to pony up the money. Now, maybe that can be done through a surcharge on the people that we're regulating, kind of like we charge meat packing industries a surcharge so to have inspectors in there to make sure the meat's okay. But it really comes down to having adequate enforcement, and that's what we don't have right now.
Mr. Selwak?
Richard Selwak. I'm going to give you a total outside the box answer. Recyclables are commodities, aluminum, paper. If you want to increase the recycling rate, they should be paying for our recyclables at curbside and then giving us a credit on our utility bills. So if I, once a week, they should come by and collect my aluminum cans and give me a $5 credit on my utility. Everybody would recycle if we got paid to recycle. So a good friend of mine's name is John Shirt, and he's a garbologist at the University of Florida. No, he calls himself a garbologist. And instead of recycling is not cost effective. And we talked about the dump and go. It's better to dump it all into the big black thing, big black garbage can, and then recycle it at the transfer plant. And one of our slogans was, "Don't be a chump, do the dump."
Mr. Scott?
The answer is yes, absolutely. As part of that, we have existing recycling programs, but again, the point is well taken, and I would be in full support of that to enhance our recycling of solid waste type activities. I just wanted to clarify one point on the prior question. I was on the button. I did not hear the word subsidy, but to clarify, GRU should not subsidize providing water and wastewater services to rural communities. If those communities want this service, it should be on a rate-neutral basis to existing GRU customers. And that's what I implied, but apparently was misconstrued. But to illustrate that point, if ratepayers have already paid for excess capacity and it's sitting there idle, and GRU has the ability to serve, and we can bring in additional customers, it brings in revenue, and it doesn't cost existing ratepayers anything, then that lowers our property taxes. That's what we did in Tallahassee, dealing with major utilities all the time, is interconnecting to existing residences to do the things that need to do to protect our water source and prevent septic tank leaching. So I wanted to clarify, I did not hear it all the way down here, and again, it's if you want it, you have to pay for it. We're not subsidizing. Thank you.
Mr. Linsky?
Mark Lensky, yes, I'd like to see much more recycling going on. In addition, I'd like to see a more robust hazardous waste collection and recycling effort. Right now, if you have something, a can of paint or whatever, you have to drive all the way up Waldo Road a few miles to take it up to the plant. I brought this up with the city solid waste department a number of times, and well, that's just the way it is. You know? I think we can do a heck of a lot better by having some hazardous waste collection sites scattered around Gainesville, and even have hazardous waste collection days where people pick it up, where waste collectors will pick it up at the curb, maybe quarterly or something like that. And going back to another question, since I've got a little bit of time here, years ago I was one of 5 leaders of a tax revolt to stop a stadium from being built in South Chicago for the Chicago Bears, being financed by, I'm done.
This is our last candidate on our last question.
Thank you, Mr. Heinsberger. First and foremost, I guess I'm glad to hear all of us say yes. I think that's the first time we heard a unanimous approval of that. That's a good thing. I remember growing up, we heard the 3 R's. I think all of us know what the 3 R's are. Reduce, recycle, reuse. And the first R is probably the most important one, is reduce. So we need to make sure we're reducing our waste stream and continue to do that. But that said also, there is somebody that's doing it here locally right now within our hospitality and restaurant industry. It's a small business owner, a friend of mine, his name is Tony. He goes throughout probably some of the establishments you may be familiar with, downtown Sharab's, Flacco's, Liquid Ginger, etc. He goes throughout there helping them reduce their waste stream by helping them do this very thing that you're talking about and the question with recycling. So I would continue to also support that, but I would continue to also support reducing what we're doing so that we don't have to recycle. It costs us more to have to recycle it because we're reducing. As a city, what the city can do to be a good partner in that is changing its procurement process. If we change the procurement process, and remember, my time's up, so we're done.
It is 7.